Now, when it comes to getting over life setbacks, I can't think of anyone better to speak to than Andy Grant. Andy's come through more than most. After losing his mum aged only 12, he became a Royal Marine and served in Iraq and then in Afghanistan. And it was in Afghanistan where he was blown up by an IED, an improvised explosive device. And having decided to have his leg amputated as a result of his injuries, Andy later went on to win 2 golds in the Invictus Games, and after that beat the world record for the 10,000 metres as an amputee. So it's time now to hear from Andy Grant, who's here with me and Katie in the Sky Bar in Old Hall Street in Liverpool, just as they set up for their lunchtime trade. Apart from the Hill Dickinson building, is there any building you particularly look out for when you're looking out of the windows over your beer?
I think that the 2 cathedrals are obviously, I was lucky enough I got to abseil the cathedral for the Old McVeigh Foundation, who I'm an ambassador for, so I always look to that. I think to have a city with 2 great cathedrals, you know, not many cities can say that, is there? And yeah, I just feel really proud when I'm up here looking over it, and it's great, yeah.
It's difficult to know where to start, really, because given that you are in your mid-30s, 36,
yep.
You've packed such a lot into those first 36 years. But perhaps if we go back to your childhood, and I've heard you say on a number of occasions, despite everything that happens to you later in life, in Afghanistan and what comes after that, the most devastating event was losing your mum when you were 12. Can you tell us a bit about that?
God, I think I cried about my mum last week. You know,
right.
Yeah, I'm 36 now, and it still bothers me now. I think, and in a weird way, if you can look at a positive around it, I think the one positive is I don't think I would have reacted as well as I have done if I hadn't been through that hardship earlier on in my life. I think it made me a lot more resilient. It hardened me a lot. And again, I don't think if I'd been, you know, blown up in Afghanistan again, would I have coped as well if I hadn't, you know, learned to be tough and hard. You know, I was a real mummy's boy. I told my mum I loved her 1,000,000 times a day. Even if I was going to the corner shop, I'd say, you know, Mum, I love you. And my dad would be going, bloody hell, you know, you're only going to the shop, you'll be back in 2 minutes. So real mummy's boy, and I had 2 younger sisters as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, losing her when she was only 36, and actually it's had an impact on me turning 36 because I remember looking at my mum thinking, God, you know, I never want to be old and potentially die, you know, and then I'm 36 now and I still feel like I'm 21. So yeah, it was really tough going through that, having to kind of grow up a lot earlier than I probably wanted to or should have. And then it probably had an impact on me joining the Marines as well.
I was going to say, was that one of the reasons might have been one of the reasons you joined the Marines?
Yeah, I definitely think I've kind of, you know, wanted to feel part of a family. I'm not saying, you know, my dad and my sisters didn't feel like a family, of course they did, but I think that having that togetherness and that kind of feeling again, and it was something a bit different, the challenges and stuff like that. But yeah, I think losing my mum at 12 was by far the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, without doubt.
Okay, well, let's move forward a bit then, in your 30-second bio. The day that you were subject to the explosion. Again, I've heard you say you can remember pretty much everything that happened that day. Just talk us through it very briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'd been in Afghanistan 5 months. I had about 6 weeks left before I was due home. It was a routine foot patrol, one that we'd done hundreds of times before. The idea on this particular morning was to go out in the pitch black, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, get ourselves basically on the enemy's doorstep, and then when it turned first light, the idea was we'd be there to surprise them. As we were patrolling out, my best mate Ian was leading the way. I was the second man, and as he's jumped over an irrigation ditch, it's been pitch black, so impossible to see, but there was a tripwire on the other side of the ditch in between 2 trees. So as he's jumped and I'm getting ready to jump, he's hit the wire, 2 bombs went off in between us, blowing him forward, blowing me back. I suffered 27 separate injuries at the time. Shrapnel to my face, a broken elbow, a broken sternum, a chunks missing, you can see on both forearms. Severed my femoral artery, which is the thing that nearly killed me, as they say you can bleed to death within 6 minutes. Huge chunk out my left leg, and I broke both lower legs. And now I have severe nerve damage, both hands, both feet. But yeah, I remember it all perfect. I remember the kind of 30 seconds or so thinking, you know, wow, I've been blown up. And then I always divided it up into 3 parts. I think the first kind of 10 minutes was a lot of shock. I was kind of screaming and shouting and the guys were calming me down. The next 10 minutes was a lot of pain. That's when the pain kicked in and, you know, I knew something was seriously wrong with my right leg. And then the last 10 minutes was just quite calm. You know, I was obviously, I'd lost a lot of blood. I was feeling quite tired, quite sleepy. And the guys were doing everything they could to keep me alive and, you know, come on Andy, keep talking to us. And then that's when the helicopter came in and picked me up. And I don't really remember much from then. I was in a coma for 2 weeks. And the next thing I remember was waking up back in the UK in intensive care with my dad sitting next to me.
You mentioned there how your mates were keeping you going. Talk about what the team did for you during that period, because they very much kept you alive, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the guy, James Smith, he was an army medic who was attached to us. He placed a tourniquet on my groin pretty much straight away. And when I woke up in the UK, that's the first thing they said to me, you know, you owe the guy who placed the tourniquet on your leg, you know, you owe him a beer, because you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. And it was such a team effort, you know, from him doing that to, you know, the helicopters then coming out to get me, the Apache helicopters who were the kind of support, the guys on the Chinook, the nurses, the doctors, the surgeons, all the guys on the ground. And when I kind of do the motivational speaking, I always talk about a team, because whether it was the guy in Birmingham airport who was holding up, you know, those things when you land on the airport, or whether it was the guy putting the tourniquet on, you know, if not everyone had done their job to the best of their ability and gave 100%, then seconds would have been lost, minutes would have been lost, hours would have been lost, and you know, I wouldn't be sitting here now sharing my story. So it was very much about the team that, you know, kept me alive that day.
And I've heard your great mate Doc Lambert
Yeah.
talk about it as well, and he talks about being the last cog in the chain, if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah.
When he does the operation and eventually amputates your leg.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone's done an amazing job to kind of keep me alive, and for me the recovery got to a certain point. I actually think Doc uses the analogy of, you know, life's at snail's pace wasn't for him, because I was okay. I mean, I could walk about and I could live a normal life, but obviously I've been in the Marines, I'd loved to travel, I loved action adventure, and I just wasn't going to get that type of quality of life with the injury. So I chose to go and see Doc Lambert, who then amputated my leg. And that's where the famous, you know, the You'll Never Walk story came from. So I did have a live bird tattoo with You'll Never Walk Alone. After his handiwork, it now says You'll Never Walk, which is a true story. No one actually ever believes me. But him, that was kind of the last major operation I had, and that was, in a way, put to bed the kind of injury, if you like, and enabled me to then start getting on with my life.
Of your injuries, at what point did you become aware of the extent of them in hospital? I think you mentioned when the surgeon came and spoke to you, when you were kind of first aware of what had happened and delivered some devastating news.
Yeah, so at the time when I woke up, my right leg obviously was still there, but it was really badly damaged. So the idea was just to, you know, not really tell me the full extent of my injuries until I was kind of out the woods and my leg was okay. Yeah. And a few days after having been woken up, I remember just assuming everything else was okay. Yeah. And that's when I got told that I'd actually lost both testicles in the blast. And straight away I knew, you know, that would be me not being able to have children. And I always, you know, had visions of, you know, one day meeting a girl, getting married, buying a big house and love children. My home would be the one where, you know, everyone would congregate and be full of laughter, love and happiness. And, you know, 20 years of age being told, actually, you're not going to be able to be a dad. There was literally nothing you could do. It was,
no solution. It's just...
There was no solutions. It was just, look, this is unfortunate. You know, you will not be able to have kids biologically. Yeah. And it was devastating. Yeah, that was definitely the hardest thing. And I didn't tell anyone for a long time. But then once I wrote a book years later, I felt like I had a skeleton in my closet or something, and I'm not embarrassed about it or anything like that. And so yeah, it was a big relief, I think, once I started talking about it. I actually felt it's just one of those things. But at the time, as you can imagine, it was just devastating.
You made the decision yourself to have the amputation. What was the thinking behind that?
To be honest, I was around a lot of lads in the rehab centre who had, you know, no legs, one leg, one arm, two legs missing and an arm, and they were living a better quality life than I was. You know, and here's me limping around with this leg that didn't really work, but it was okay. And then I was looking at mates who were climbing mountains, going to the Paralympics, learning to cycle. I was just like, God, there's got to be more to life than me walking around with a walking stick. And the other big thing was, I didn't know from one day to the next what I'd be like. One day I'd wake up and I'd think, you know what, who cares if I can't run? It's not that bad. Yeah. And then the next day I'd be bedridden and it'd be so sore. And I couldn't really plan my life because I didn't know kind of what state my body was going to be in. Whereas once I had the leg amputated, it was like, right, that's it now. I can kind of really crack on with my life. And I think it was just a mix of seeing other people and being inspired by them. Yeah. But then also just wanting to put an end to this and really move on.
Great. Well, move on you did. And tell us about the Invictus Games, and because you didn't necessarily think you were going to take that seriously to start with. I think in your book, the chapter's called The Egg and Spoon Race, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, hope don't offend anyone when I kind of speak like this, but you've got to imagine the Marines, it's very, all that dark humour, gallows humour, and so during the rehab centre, we're just a bunch of, I don't even know what word you're allowed to say on this podcast or what's PC anymore type thing, but
feel free.
We were just all a bunch of cripples in this rehab centre, with no arms and no legs, and be thinking, who's going to pay to come and watch us run around the track? It'd be a comedy sketch if anything. So I don't think anyone really took it serious, and then obviously a few big names start getting involved, and Prince Harry gets involved, and you meet him, and then suddenly then the whole world media is there, and you think actually this is going to be quite cool, and obviously take part in it. And then when you're in London and you see everyone, I think it was a little bit, it felt amazing to see the country almost say, we're grateful for what you've done for the country, and I don't think we're great at that in the UK. It's just not our culture. No. But I think that was a time where people could come out and actually say, wow, thanks for your service. But then once guys realised this was actually quite competitive, guys were then training properly, and then it became like a little mini Olympics, which was amazing. And then I was lucky enough to win a couple of gold medals in the 1500 and the 400, and a bronze in the relay, and it was just a brilliant thing to be part of. You actually felt like a superstar. You were on TV and people were asking for autographs and selfies. It was really cool and an amazing thing, which really then springboarded me onto other things.
Yeah, because you then did take your running very seriously, didn't you, and became the world record holder for 10,000 metres?
Yeah, the plan originally was to go on to the Paralympics. I thought that would be the next goal, but unfortunately for me, the longest distance for someone with my injury is just 400 metres, and some of those guys are like ridiculously quick, and I'm more of a long distance runner. But I thought there's got to be other amputees around the world who like running longer distances. So I've done a bit of Googling, and I found out there was a guy called Rick Ball who lost his leg in a car accident. He was from Canada, and he ran 10k in 37 minutes 53 seconds. So I switched focus from the Paralympics then to this 10k record, and then that's when I'm doing the whole, I was writing 37:53 in my garage, and it was like looking at this number every day. And then that's when I really took things seriously. I took things to the next level, and broke the record by 36 seconds. But for me, the greatest bit about it was I'd put the whole injured soldier card to bed. No one can ever feel sorry for me now. If let's go for a run, and then we can feel sorry for each other if you want, but don't ever look at me as if you feel sorry for me no more. And I think once I broke that record and I was running a fast time, I had all my colleagues I was in the Marines with, some of them had gone on to Special Forces, and they were messaging me saying, God, Andy, you're fitter than me. So to me, it wasn't the fact I'm the fastest disabled man, it was the fact that I'm back to being old Andy again. I'm just like a normal Marine again.
We'll get on to your 3 a.m. conversations in a minute, but one final question. Your book, you've mentioned it, You'll Never Walk, nominated for Sports Book of the Year. Who were you up against? Because there were some big names.
Tiger Woods had one going in it, I think Lance Armstrong or something, but so it was. What was really funny about that was my best mate Phil Reed was the one who ghost-wrote it for me, and obviously his dad Brian Reed know really well, and I think Brian wrote a few books but never quite being longlisted, and it was his son's first book, and he did get longlisted, so I think that created a bit of family banter, but it was amazing, and it's probably the proudest thing I've done, writing the book, because like I said, I was able to just tell my story, and I think it's probably what I get most feedback now. People have read it and it's helped them through a tough time, and it's something hopefully I can look back on in years to come and probably read it and think, God, that was my life, because it all seems like such a long time ago now.
Yeah, definitely one for the grandchildren. In due course. Well, let's move on to your 3 a.m. conversations then, and I actually reread the book before we met today, and I was wondering which 3 you were going to restrict yourself to, because a number of occasions throughout the whole story you describe lying awake at night worrying about your mum, being in Afghanistan, the first time you went out in a firefight, and all of those things. But you actually picked 3 after the amputation, and the first one you picked was regret, and the conversations you have with yourself about that. Tell me about that.
Just think maybe, I don't know, I've got older and stuff, and you look back and listen, I know everyone makes mistakes in life and regrets and stuff, but just certain things that you wish you would have done different, and you know, maybe you've hurt people in the past, or things haven't quite worked out the way you wanted, and just sadness and regret really of just things that have happened. And I think I'm prone to kind of let that play on my mind, which annoys me, because I talk in my motivational speaking about, you know, living in the moment and not kind of dwelling too much in the past. And yeah, here I am in, you know, the middle of the night thinking about past mistakes and past regrets. So I just think it's something I need to try and get better at, really.
Do you not think the fact that you accept that you've made those mistakes, and there was a period where it went wild a bit, as you describe it, adds credibility to you as a motivational speaker, gives a degree of reality about you?
Yeah, no, it does, yeah. At those kind of moments in the night, though, when you think, I just think, I do give myself a little bit of a pass sometimes, thinking that, you know, I went through a lot. You know, you've obviously going to, you know, make mistakes, and potentially, you know, the wheels potentially could come off. But then I look back now, it's like that old saying, you know, age is wasted on the young, or youth is wasted on the young, or something there. And I just think, I struggle sometimes with some regrets. Obviously, I went through some challenges, and I picked up a bit of a gambling addiction at one point, and I look back at that time, and I was young, gambling, being irresponsible, and now I'm 36, I've got a little girl now, and I think, God, what I could have spent that money on now, and what I could have done here, and what I could have done there. But then on the other hand, I think, well, you did go through a lot, and you know, it wasn't always going to be perfect and straightforward. But then I think, I know, but if you were just a little bit more sensible, and you were a little bit more, they're just like regrets like that, really. I think they kind of just eat me up a little bit. Yeah,
I'm bound to ask you, what was going through your mind when you blew 10 grand on Boxing Day, and you bet on Liverpool to win at Stoke?
Yeah, it was. Some of them were really bad. Do you know what it was? I think it was just an escape I was looking for. You know, my life was so crazy, if you like, in the Marines, and I loved it. It was brilliant. And then I found myself in a position where, you know, the little bit of compensation I'd got from the government, I was able to just get myself on the property ladder. So I was mortgage free. I had a pension coming in. I was doing these motivational talks, getting paid, you know, a lot of money considering what I was getting paid in the Marines. So I just felt a little bit like a rock star almost, if you like, financially, which was ridiculous to think. But I'm only in my mid-20s and stuff, and it just didn't seem real. And then I'd go for a beer, and then obviously once you've had a drink, your mindset is a bit skewed anyway. And you know, the 20 quid's kind of bet didn't excite me anymore. So then it turned to £50, £500, and then into the thousands. And then it was just, you know, when people talk about like life, everything was just crumbling down. It kind of felt like that, you know, drinking too much, gambling too much, and it was just a crazy time. And they're the kind of times I look back and regret now and think, God, how stupid were you? Do you know what I mean?
Do you think you lost a bit of purpose during that period?
100%. I think I'm still searching for it now, to be honest, as well. I still have my days now where I think it's just because growing up in Bootle, you know, you look around you and stuff at people, you know, your friends, family and stuff, and I think the goal was to, you know, get a job, and then at 60 you'll retire, you'll be able to pay off your mortgage, and then that's it. I kind of had that at 25.
Yeah.
So it was like, right, well, everyone around me in Bootle had this kind of goal and this dream. Well, I've done that at 25. So what do I do now? Where's my purpose? And then that's when it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll go off here, I'll go and try this, I'll do that. And I think that's where it stemmed from, 100%.
So let's move on to your second 3am conversation, which is a combination of comparing yourself to other people or worrying about your life's purpose. So tell me about that.
I guess it's just kind of knowing where to fit in, really, because I've got a lot of friends who are super successful, very wealthy people, and I look at them all the time, and they're getting up at 5am and they're doing their emails, and you know, you're having a conversation with them, and sometimes they're not in the room because they're just thinking of the next business deal, the next that. And I think, you know what, God, I need to really start up my game. You know, I need to be kind of at least trying to get to where they are and get that same success. And also I think, no, listen, just calm down and just relax.
Let me ask you some questions then. One word answer. Okay. Do you think you add value with what you do? Motivational speaking, your ambassador roles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do those roles fulfill you?
Yeah.
You're financially secure. You've said you've got that covered for what you need. Are you happy?
Yeah.
You've cracked it, lad. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it, Katie.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get a bit bogged down, don't we, with what productivity is and whether it is just about, is it emails at 5am? Is it going for a run at 5am? Is it catching up on sleep if you've been up with a baby at 5am? You know, it means different things to different people, doesn't it? And I think God, particularly, as lawyers, I think we're measured by productivity, as are many people, and you can get really bogged down with it. But actually, productive means totally different things, doesn't it, in different scenarios?
Massively, yeah. And I think it's a bit of a taboo subject talking about money and stuff, but I think, how much money do you kind of need? I kind of live my life. I do what I want, when I want, within reason. Don't get me wrong, I'm not drinking pina coladas every day on the beach or, jetting off first class anywhere. I'm not doing anything like that. But for what I want to do, I'm, perfectly, cool with that. So it just poses that question. I think where I kind of kick myself a little bit is that productivity. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm fortunate. I can kind of do what I want when I want, but why don't I learn a language? Why aren't I in the gym more? Why aren't I doing... So using my time a bit wisely, I think that's where maybe a little bit of unhappiness comes from. It's like I could do more with my time. I could be better and improving myself a little bit more rather. Do you know what I mean?
You're like an ultra high achieving personality type, aren't you? So that I think that makes it difficult.
That's the thing, and it doesn't really excite me doing something a little bit. I can't just go and do something. I need to. I'm doing something, really I want to do it, and then that takes a lot of planning. So you can kind of then not start it. Yeah. So you need to get into a bit more of a routine of just getting stuff done and trying to improve in it in any way you can. And I think that's where, again, my purpose, my productivity could be a bit better, and I probably shouldn't try and fit into these really super high achievers, multi-millionaires.
Andy, we better move on to your third conversation, because they're setting up the bar here now in the Sky Bar in Liverpool. So Katie, this was something you were really interested in.
Yeah, so you've mentioned being a dad as one of the things that keeps you up at night, and I think that's going to resonate with lots of people. So you talked before about how you found out at 20 that you wouldn't be able to have biological children, but then I think 5 years later, when you first met baby Alba, how did you feel when you actually were holding your baby for the first time? 20
years of age and told, you can't be a dad, and then 5 or 6 years later, have this little miracle in your arms. I just burst out crying. Heard her cry for the first time, set me off crying, and just the greatest feeling in the world. And I think being a dad and seeing this little person grow is just, the best job in the world. And I feel so lucky, and I think that one moment of holding her just made it all seem worthwhile. Getting blown up in Afghanistan was worth it just for that moment.
And is she 9 now?
She's 9 now, yeah. 10 in October, yeah.
And you've got a good relationship with your own dad. How do you think you're like him as a father, and in what ways are you different?
I think I'm a lot more affectionate. He's very old school, kind of, like I said, when I told my mum I loved her, a million times a day. With my dad, it's very much like, you're all right, none of that kind of talk. With Albert, I'm like telling her I love her a million times a day. Hugging her every time I see her, and she's just, so I'm very hands-on in that kind of sense. But I'm similar to my dad in the sense that, we have a good laugh. I think I confide in my dad quite a lot, and I think Albert does to me. So different and similar in ways, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned before at the start, I think when you were telling your story at the beginning, this idea that you losing your mum made you the resilient person that you became when you were in the Marines. And I think as a parent, everybody battles with, okay, how do we raise resilient kids but without traumatising them? Is that something that you think about with Alba?
Yeah, so the other kind of 2-3 a.m. thoughts are just how to be a good dad.
Yeah.
In every area, really. I let's say grew up in Bootle and loved my childhood. Absolutely loved every minute of it. But it's only when you get older you realise that we didn't have a lot. I mean, didn't need a lot, but didn't really have a lot. And it's only when you leave Bootle and you think, God, Bootle's actually quite a deprived area, and it's, as but against my home, and I love it.
Yeah.
But you think, well, I want better for my children, so it's kind of getting that balance of, I want Albert to grow up with that kind of, with that grit and determination that I think most people in Bootle have got. But then also I don't want to have to put her through all the things I had to go through.
Yeah.
So it's how do you kind of mix that, and you think, even education, you think, do I put it in a school that I went to, or do I maybe work a bit harder and maybe get into a private school? But then you think, is that what's best for it in that sense? And I'm thinking, I want to toughen her up, but I don't want anything to happen to her. And you just that constant battle of just trying to be right, trying to do right by her, do the right thing. And I think that's the thing that I struggle with, of not knowing the best way to do it, really.
Yeah.
If it's any comfort, it doesn't get any easier the older they get.
Do you know what? And it breaks my heart. So, like I say, we're so close, and she's 9, and then it really annoys me when everyone says, "Oh, you've only got that for a few more years," and she's going to go off and you know, and I'm like, I hope not, because we're such, you know, best friends now. And yeah, it makes me so sad to think that she's going to go off one day, because I want to raise her so that, you know, when she's 18, 19, 20, she'll go travelling and see the world. You know, I'd love for her to do that. But then it'd also break my heart as well, you know, having to say goodbye to her. So I've got a real mixed feelings on being a dad and what it means and what success is as a dad.
Has it made you look back and realise what your dad must have been going through when you were joining the Marines and going to Iraq?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine having my daughter being in the military. I couldn't do that. I mean, I'm beside myself when, you know, I've not seen her for a few hours, so I don't know how he coped. But again, it's that thing. I'm sure he was super proud, and, you know, he'd done a good job when I left at home at 17 to join the Marines. And I'm sure I'll be proud when Albert goes and does her thing. But then at the same time, it is going to break my heart. And I do look back and I think, God, my poor dad's sitting there when I was in hospital, for example, when I'm in a coma, and he's sitting there watching me.
Yeah.
It must have been so tough for him, and I appreciate now just everything that he'd done for me. And like I say, that's probably why we're so close as well. And hopefully then me and Albert will continue to be close as well.
Yeah.
You sit here today, accomplished motivational speaker, podcaster, ambassador for businesses and charities. Throw your mind back to when you were in the hospital bed in Selly Oak and whatever. How did you cope? What messages would you give to people who were in that type of situation, really struggling with either mental or physical issues?
I think the three things I'd kind of hone in on is, I don't think we actually realise just how resilient and strong we are. Again, it annoys me when people say, "Oh, this has never happened to me. I don't know how you've coped. I don't know. I could never have done it myself." And my response is always the same. I say, you would have, and you could have, because I think we surprise ourselves with how strong we are. So you've got to kind of give yourself a bit of a pat on the back, I think, when you are going through something tough, and actually back yourself, because we've all been through tough times in life. So I always try and remember tough times I've been through. Then I look at how I've overcome that, and then that then gives me confidence in dealing with whatever I'm going through right now. So at the time when I was in hospital, I thought, right, this is going to be tough, but it's going to be a lot easier than losing my mum at 12. And I got through that okay. You know, I was like, this time I've got all these amazing doctors and nurses to help me, you know, it's going to be okay. So number one, I think, remind yourself of how strong you are. I think that will always help. I think two is your surroundings. You know, you've got to surround yourself by good people, by positive people. And when I was in the hospital bed, they had been blown to bits. There was a guy in the bed opposite me who'd lost both his legs. He's making me smile, and the next day when he's a bit down, I'm making him smile. There was just so much positivity I was around, which was just unbelievable. And I think it was hard to feel sorry for yourself and be down for too long when you had just amazing friends and family and support. So number two, I'd say surround yourself by those positive people. And the third thing is kind of just, it sounds a bit cheesy, but just set small goals, you know, and don't try and get there too quick. Almost enjoy the journey of coming out of this dark place. You know, I never once thought I'm going to be a motivational speaker and break world records. I remember literally wanting to be able to walk from my house to the corner shop, buy the paper, and come back and read the back pages without being in pain. Like, that was my goal in life, to just be able to do that. Walk the dog to the shop, come back, read the paper, and have a cup of tea. Then obviously you do that and you think, you know what, I'll run the shop, and then actually, you know what, I'm going to run here, and the goals then change. So just set small goals that are going to get you out of this dark place, and then kind of build on from there. So yeah, remind yourself how strong you are, surround yourself by good people, and then set those small goals that are going to get you to the big one.
Excellent advice. Final question. I've heard you say, and I think you mentioned it earlier, focus 10% on what's in front of you and 90% in the future. Mm-hmm. If what we've seen for Andy Grant in 36 years is 10%, what the hell does the 90% next look like? What's next for you?
No idea. I mean, again, as much as I have accomplished and feel really proud of myself, there is definitely that bit of me that is still searching, you know, for a purpose. I think some of the coolest people I know are in, you know, the 40s, 50s and 60s and still don't know what they want to do with their life, and I'm a little bit like that. You know, I feel really happy that I am, but, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the future. I think a lot more challenges. I'd like to really push myself and do various things. I'd love to one day row across the Atlantic Ocean with Ian, the guy I got blown up with. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'd love to climb a few more mountains around the world. I love being in the mountains and to see the world. You know, I love going on holiday. I love, you know, obviously when my daughter gets a bit bigger as well, taking her to these places around the world and just enjoy life. You know, again, another cheesy kind of quote, but that I think it was it John Lennon, when the teacher said, you know, about being happy or something, or what's the meaning of happiness or something, or life, and he said to be happy or something, and he said, you don't understand the question or something. I just love being happy. I love just having a good time. I love being with friends and family and enjoying myself, and if I can just keep on enjoying myself, then I think, like you said before, we put so much pressure on, you've got to do this and do that, and I just want to be happy. I just want to be with my mates, with my friends, my family, and have a beer in my hand and the sun in the sky, and honestly, I'll be all right with that.
You've earned that, mate, if I may say so. Andy, thanks very much for your time today. Thanks for coming in and being so open.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And hopefully the listeners will really take something out of what we've said. Thank you very much
cheers.
indeed.
Thanks very much.